Confession. Starting a business is amazing, but it's one of the hardest things you will ever do. I started my sustainable fashion consultancy called Recloseted over 6 years ago, and I'm incredibly proud of what I built. I was able to scale it to multiple six figures and do all the things that make it look like you're successful, like travel for work with amazing clients, all these things. And don't get me wrong, I'm incredibly proud of what I built, but I feel like it shouldn't have taken me as long as it did. And part of the reason why it took me that long is because I wasn't growing in a sustainable way. I was using grow at all cost strategies, and I will talk more about that later. But additionally, I didn't have the cheat codes and the right sustainable strategies, which is why I am doing this podcast episode, but also doing this podcast in general, because this is exactly the sustainable strategies, the real behind the scenes, and the unfiltered truths that I wish I had with my first business. So I'm going to be sharing 11 strategies that I wish I knew when I was building my first business so that you can grow faster and grow more sustainably and achieve your version of success. Without any further ado, let's dive into the first strategy and the first thing I wish I knew, which is your total market size is really important. And that should actually dictate what kind of business you go into and what industry you choose. Building a business is hard enough, so don't build it by picking a market that is too small, because if you do that, you won't be able to make the revenue that you want to make and you won't be able to achieve your goals, which is not what we want. Look at the overall market size as well as your total addressable market, or your TAM. As an example, let's say that I'm really passionate about building cases. I like to have cool phone cases, laptop cases, all these things. However, maybe I feel like the phone case and laptop case market is too saturated. So I decide to do cases for virtual reality goggles. Let's just say I like to make cases for VR headsets. While that might be interesting, as of right now, take a look at how many people actually have VR headsets and what that actually looks like. Because yes, maybe in the future, as more people get them, you'll have more customers, a bigger market. But as of right now, that may not make sense. That's just a random example, but think about for you, if you want to start a business, how many people would actually want, buy, and use your products or services? And is that enough to sustain the lifestyle and the business expenses and all those things you want to have? And the reason why I bring this up is because with my sustainable fashion consultancy Recloseted, I was like, okay, I'm targeting the fashion industry. And fashion brings in trillions in revenue every single year. So I was like, great, market size is trillions of dollars. However, that's not the case because I was specializing in sustainable fashion. If you think of the market as this whole big pie, it was like this huge pie. If you're watching, I'm making a little circle, but this huge pie. And then it was like a sliver and then a smaller sliver from that sliver. I knew, but I didn't pay too much attention into it because I was like, I'm super passionate about this. I want to do this. But at the end of the day, I would really advise you to make sure that your market size is big enough. And if it's not, then see if you can expand a little bit, which is what I'm doing now. Instead of just working with sustainable fashion founders, I am now working with conscious business owners more generally, more broadly, because I know that I can help people regardless of what industry, what type of business they want to do, but I only want to work with people that my values align with theirs, essentially. So think about the market. That's the first thing I wish that someone had sat me down and been like, hey, Selena, is the market big enough? Is this actually going to sustain your lifestyle? And is this actually going to be something that can be a self-sufficient business and also sustain your lifestyle as a founder? So really think about that. The second thing that I wish I was more strategic about, and I wish I sat down to really think through, is nailing my unique selling proposition or my USP and making sure I solved a real problem. I talked about this all the time in previous episodes of Recloseted Radio. Previously, it was like, okay, you need to take a customer first approach. You need to put your customers first. You need to know them intimately. You need to solve a problem for them, solve a pain point, and create products and services around that, because there are so many products and services out there nowadays. We want to make sure that what you're doing is going to provide value and be different. I still stand by that. I still think that's so important, but I want to take it one step further and challenge you to think of not only what you can do to support this unique client avatar or clientele that you want to be helping, but also what's going to make you different and what's going to make you unique. Because at the end of the day, there are so many businesses out there nowadays, so you need to figure out what's going to make you unique, what's going to make you stand out. For me, with my previous business, I was one of the early adopters to the sustainable fashion scene. So at the time, there weren't that many players. And of the players that were out there, it was relatively easy to figure out what my USP was going to be. I wanted to be genuine, and I also wanted to give people a lot of value. whenever people work with me, they're always like, oh my gosh, I'm getting so much out of this. This is amazing. And I also wanted to make my knowledge and my strategies accessible, even if you didn't have the funds to work with me. So that's why I had the Recloseted Radio podcast. I had an email newsletter. I had social media, all this stuff. And so people just understood with Recloseted, they give a lot. There's a lot of free value. And that's how I was able to build this brand. Think about for you, what is your USP? Especially if you are in a quote unquote saturated market and there's a lot of people out there. What's going to make you stand out? And if you're scratching your head and you're not sure, I would really recommend you do a ton of market research with your ideal customer. Ask some questions around, okay, of the brands and the businesses out there nowadays that can help you solve this challenge and pain point, what do you think is missing? What can I add? What can allow you to take this to the next level? Is it a level of customer service that you're looking for? Is it a community that you're looking to be a part of? Just what is it? And think really clearly about that, whether you have a product, a service, or whatever it is you're selling. And building upon everything I just talked about, the third thing I want to mention is that having a great product will solve a lot of your problems and is sometimes your get out of jail free card. Because if you solve people's problems and pain points, it's differentiated in the market, it's unique, you know it works, then your marketing becomes so much easier, your selling becomes so much easier because people are probably like, oh my gosh, just give this to me right now. They're probably telling everyone they know about it. So it makes your sales and your marketing a lot easier. And then, of course, if you are getting great testimonials, if you're getting great results, if you're getting great reviews, it's just that flywheel effect. So having a great product is so important, which is why I always say you want to take the time to perfect your product. Make sure you are creating minimal viable products to test things out, see what people are thinking, get that feedback, iterate on it, improve on it, and then have something that you're so proud of. For that first launch, if that means you're just having 1 or 2 products or 1 or 2 services, that's fine. But just make sure you perfect that signature product because having a great product just puts your business in such a better place. Because if you think about it, if you have something that's shitty and no one wants, that's such an uphill battle to try to sell it. You're probably going to have to beg people to buy it. You're going to have to convince them and plead with them. And it's just not fun. And so have a great product. Take the time to create something that is well worth someone's time, investment, and energy, and that will help your business so much. And speaking of selling and marketing, the next thing I wish I did way sooner was understand that I'm not just building a brand and I'm not just building a business and I'm not just doing marketing for the sake of it, but I am trying to build a community. And community is that golden age buzzword nowadays. I feel like everyone wants a community that's full of their ideal customers, is engaged and primed and ready to buy from you. That is definitely the gold star or the North Star that every single founder aims towards. But that is something that takes time and energy to build and time and energy to get there. And that's okay. I just wanted to level set and say that because I don't want you to think that you're going to start posting on Instagram randomly and start sending a newsletter every other week and sometimes miss a week and then all of a sudden, poof, you're going to have a great community. Like it doesn't work like that. It takes time, it takes effort, and it takes a lot of intentional strategic decisions. And so that being said, community-first marketing is definitely the way forward. There's so many different Instagram accounts. There's so many different TikTok accounts. There's so many different podcasts and YouTube channels. If you really want to be worth someone's time to consume your content, to watch your content, you need to make sure it's perfect for them. You're attracting the right person. You're nurturing them. You're warming them up. And you're just fostering that community. And so that is something that is so important. You're not just building a brand. You're not just building a business. You're not just building your platforms to gain more followers. The strategic intent here is to build a community of people that love what you're doing, are obsessed with your brand, and just primed and ready to buy whatever you launch. That's the goal. And so you might be wondering, okay, I want to build a community, but how do I do that? I always say it's going to be different for every single person, but if you haven't already done your market research, do that to see what is missing. As an example, if you're starting a high-end blazer brand and your target is corporate working gals, then I would do a ton of market research with this segment to see what's going on. Maybe a lot of corporate working gals feel isolated at work, or they feel like they don't truly have mentors at work. So you can create some sort of community where you can bring these women together, have these vulnerable conversations that they can't necessarily have at work, feel so supported, and then, as a side benefit, they can also buy this amazing blazer that helps them feel like they are equipped and ready and in charge to take on whatever challenges are thrown to them at work. So really think through what your ideal customer is struggling with, what is missing, and how you can fill that gap. With community as well, it's not a one-way street. It has to be a two-way dynamic. You need to engage back with people. You need to start conversations with people. You need to be curious. Think about it like you are building a relationship or you are building a friendship with someone. This is not just some random person or random people on the internet that you don't know. In your head, I would treat this like this is a new relationship that you are trying to build. So if you meet someone and you're like, this person's amazing, I want to be friends, what are you going to do? You're going to make plans with them. You're going to make sure you keep your promises, keep your word. You're going to show up, be there for them. And so do the exact same thing with your community. It definitely is a slow drip, but I promise you, the more you put into it, the more time you spend on it, the more you'll get back. It might look like you hosting events. It might look like you going live. It might look like you being vulnerable with your community and showing the behind the scenes. It might look like all those things put together. And if you're listening, you're like, oh my God, Selena, that sounds like a lot of work. Well, it is. You can't build a community overnight. It does take work. It does take time. And I just wish I knew that. I feel like a lot of the times we see people's communities on Instagram, online, and we're like, wow, they have such an engaged community. I want that. But we don't see the hours and hours and hours spent behind the scenes, DMing people, talking to people, creating amazing content, putting on events, doing all this stuff. So trust me, I have been in the rooms of some founders with some amazing communities and I know what it takes and I've seen the behind the scenes. So trust me when I say it takes time, takes intentionality, but the best time to start is now. And like I said, don't look at these like transactions, look at these as relationships and friendships that you're trying to nurture and blossom. And in looking at it that way, hopefully it makes it a little bit more fun and not like, oh, I have to do this for marketing or whatever. And building upon marketing and building community, the next thing I want to talk about is getting visibility. So as you're building a new brand and as you're building a new business, getting in front of the right people is so important. A lot of the times we may not have the time or the resources or be able to do ads. So a couple years into Recloseted, I started doing strategic partnerships. And that changed the game for me. Instead of doing a bunch of random partnerships, I really lasered in and focused on a few and nurtured those relationships. This is important because to be able to do a partnership, both parties need to put in the work. I have to put in the work to introduce my audience to this partner. The partner has to do the work, put in the effort to introduce me to their audience. So it's like a two-way street. I also say you always want to be strategic around who you're partnering with. So really making sure that your ideal customer is actually in their community. It is such a waste of time. And if your ideal resources customer doesn't even follow them or isn't in their community. So you want to pick the right person. On that note, to find the right partners, do your market research, ask your ideal customer who else they're following, what other communities they're in that they really enjoy being in, what brands they purchase. Do all that stuff, do some light stalking or some heavy stalking, I don't know, to figure out who you want to partner with. From there, you just reach out to them. You could start with a simple Instagram post collaboration, see how that goes. Or maybe you could do a joint event together, whatever that is. I had some strategic partnerships with my past business. And trust me, once you nurture and have those relationships, it is such a game changer because they can expand your community, they can bring in more people, and also they can give you business as well. But make sure that it's not just a one-way street, right? We never want to be the only ones taking. We want to make sure we're giving back to other people as well. The next thing, or the sixth thing, is I wish I invested in my own learning and development way sooner. When I was first starting Recloseted, I was working another 9-to-5 job. It was my first job out of university, and I was just trying to save all the money I could. Because I was really stingy with investing in things, but I would invest my time in books and podcasts and all that stuff. But a couple years in, I still wasn't getting the results I wanted. I was still working so hard, and I finally just recognized that I could not keep going like this. So I invested in my first program. And I was so scared. I remember at the time, I think it was like $1,998, which is not that much money. But for me at the time, that was the most amount of money I've ever invested in anything. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, I hope this works out. But it really transformed the way I structured my business. I was able to create my Launch Your Brand course from it, was able to free up some of my time and also be able to service more clients. And so it was so helpful for me. And I gained so much from that knowledge because yes, I could have probably figured it out on my own eventually, but I really valued at that time getting the complete roadmap, getting the A to Z, and I just had to follow it. That was the only capacity I had. And it was so helpful for someone to come in, be more intentional, be more strategic, show me what worked for them, what didn't, and then I could just follow it. When you invest in something, yes, you're investing in the knowledge and the strategies, but if you think about it, you're also investing and getting your time back, because I think if I had built Launch Brand on my own and just tried to figure it out, it probably would have taken me an extra 2 years, if I'm being honest, because I didn't know how to structure the lessons, what platform to do it on, how to capture testimonials. Like, there's all these little things. I invested in that knowledge on how to do all those things and more, but I also invested in getting my time back, doing it quicker. The other thing I've learned with investing in things is that I get to get someone else's roadmap and learn from someone else's mistake, which to me is priceless, because I hate making mistakes. I know you probably do too, because making a mistake sometimes can cost you a lot of money, cost you a lot of time. And so if I can invest in something that teaches me how to do it, saves me time, and prevents mistakes, sign me up, right? So I wish that I started investing in things sooner. But that being said, though, you want to be strategic in what you invest in and actually make sure that it is what you need right now. I've also had founders that I know on the flip side that aren't necessarily scared to invest, but they just invest in everything, and then they don't have time to actually go through or do anything. You want to be somewhere in the middle where you are investing in things that will actually transform and change your business and help you achieve your version of success. But also you want to be intentional and make sure you actually have the time and the energy and the resources to commit to whatever you're investing so that it can make a difference for you. The next thing you always want to be on top of is your numbers. You need to know your numbers intimately. I would avoid looking at my revenue and my costs and just be like, oh, I hope it's working out. But that is such a dangerous and insane thing to do looking back now. You need to be looking at your numbers at least on a weekly basis, if not more, so you know exactly how much money you're making, how much you're spending, and then how much you have left over. If you don't look every week on a minimum basis, you won't know whether or not you're hitting your revenue targets, as an example. And if you aren't, then you at least have the awareness of that, and then you can be like, okay, maybe we should do more marketing, or maybe we need to up the noise on this launch, or whatever it is, right? You need to know. Also, with your costs, if you aren't looking every single week and you're just bleeding money, you have no idea where it's going, that's so dangerous. You need to make sure you know, not to stress you out or anything, but you should be looking at it. And if you want a tool to help you do that, I use QuickBooks. A lot of accountants like QuickBooks. I'll leave a link down below. I'll leave a link to it so that you can check it out. But it is important for you to have a dashboard, have a snapshot view, and just know what's going on in your business. The next thing I wish I knew was that I need to set up systems that work for me and not against me. It makes sense on surface to have systems and processes so that you can be more efficient, but there is a couple caveats here I wanted to talk about. Personally, for me, I am a very type A person. I like to be organized. I like to check things off my to-do list. That's the type of person I am and the type of personality I have. In the early days of my business, even when I didn't really know what was going on, I would try to systematize and organize things. While that is important, it also is a waste of time because you're still figuring things out. Instead of spending so much time making these systems and processes, I should have invested that time into my actual business and figuring out my services and figuring out who I wanted to invest in and learning from people versus trying to make this Notion dashboard pretty or trying to make this spreadsheet. It was just such a waste of time. Wait until your business is in a good place and you know what you're selling, you know what your marketing is, all those things, you have an idea. You can roughly write down some things on your notes app or something. Mean to say that everything needs to live in your brain. That sounds crazy, but you don't need to be making all these Notion dashboards and all this stuff if you're just not ready yet. When you do get to the place where you have something that is a repetitive task that you have down pat, then you can make your system and process. At that time, you can really determine, okay, what are some things that eventually I want to outsource? And those are some things you write down the process for. Or what are some things that you're constantly doing in your business? It's a repetitive task. It doesn't really need to be done by you. And actually, your time would be better spent somewhere else. So that's something maybe you can put a system on and you can automate or do whatever. So be strategic with your systems, but make sure it works for you and doesn't cause you more work, more grief, and more pain. So that is my tip there. The next tip is hiring strategically. And there are so many nuances with this. I will definitely do future episodes on hiring and we can go deep into this. When I was first starting Recloseted, I was so reluctant to hire because I was so scared. And also because my business was my baby and I just felt like I couldn't trust anyone else with it. So I had control issues, which is definitely something that I've heard from other founders. It's not just a me thing. I know other people feel this way, but At one point, you need to understand that if you want to scale, if you want to grow and not go crazy and make sure that you're not the only one that's supposed to move this forward, you need to hire help. And because I had waited too long to outsource, I was desperate to get someone in because I was stretched so thin, I was so burnt out, and that's not the position you want to be in. You want to be hiring in a season where, yeah, you kind of need someone, but you can wait until you find the perfect person. Always hire a little bit sooner or start to look casually a little bit sooner than you think. Then start to also always write down things you're doing that you may eventually want to outsource. As an example, for me, I used to outsource a lot of my marketing admin things. So like scheduling posts, exporting things from Canva, all this stuff. And when I was doing those tasks, I would just do screen recordings or make videos as I was doing it so that that person eventually, when they did start, I could just send them these videos and I wouldn't have to spend time or take time out of my week to be able to onboard them. Just some tips there, but always hire sooner than you think. I also will do future tips on hiring, but start with a contractor. Don't start with a full-time employee to test it, see if they're a good fit, and then you can sign them on full-time. When you onboard them, make sure that you have all these videos, all these things, but you leave them room to be able to bring in their own expertise and their own ideas and thoughts as well. Always make sure you have some sort of KPI metric thing with them so that they know what good looks like, what the expectations are, and all that stuff. So these are just some basic hiring things, but overall, I learned so much with hiring and I will do future episodes on it, but hire sooner than you think and just start to jot some stuff down that you think you may want to outsource one day. And if you're keeping track, we are now on the 10th thing that I wish I knew. This is something I learned last year, so this is a relatively new learning, but I wish I forced myself to have at minimum quarterly board meetings. And even if it's just with me, that's fine, but it is important to at least on a quarterly basis, look very, very, very critically at your business, at your revenue, at your costs, at your profit, at your metrics, at what's going on, and assess if anything needs to change. And just be very critical about it. Leave your emotions, leave your feelings out of it, and just be so cutthroat because the numbers don't lie and what's going on doesn't lie. And you need to face these truths head on so that you can actually make a plan and salvage things and pivot and do whatever. Last summer, it all came to a head when I was like, I cannot do this anymore. And I was just avoiding it and didn't have the courage to face it. But my partner was like, I don't think this is good for you anymore. Your dream business has literally turned into your nightmare. And it took him holding that mirror up to me for me to be like, yeah, you're right. I need to actually stop avoiding this and sit in this and figure out what the F I'm going to do. It was something I had put off and I really needed to do for so long. At minimum, do this every single quarter. Hold that mirror up to yourself and be like, is this still going well? Am I still enjoying it? Do I need to make a contingency plan? The best businesses are consistently iterating, consistently pivoting, so that they don't go broke and so that they don't go out of business. We need to do the same thing. I would encourage you right now to pause this episode, pull up your calendar and schedule that quarterly meeting with yourself and really take a look at your business and see what needs to be changed or improved, if anything. And the last thing I wish I knew going into this is how important my mindset was going to be. I've always been someone that's into self-development and mindset and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, if you have a limiting belief or you don't have the right mindset going into something, you are not going to do it. And it's going to manifest and show up in really weird ways. You could procrastinate a lot. You could avoid things. Like there's all these things we do to self-sabotage. But if you don't address the root issue and you aren't aware of it, then you won't be as successful as you can be. You could have a dream to start this business, but if you're worried about what people think, or you feel like you just don't have it in you to be successful, or you have these money limiting beliefs, then maybe it will all manifest together and it will show up as you never doing it and you never taking action, whatever that looks like. But your mindset as an entrepreneur and as a founder is so important. And it does take time to work on this stuff. And it is something you continuously need to put in the work. And I wish I knew that. I sometimes foolishly think that with these self-development things, you work on it once and you're like, yes, I'm great. I have no more limiting beliefs. But then you live life and you collect some new ones and something else happens. And so this is a continuous practice. It's a continuous journey. And so, yeah, I mean, going into this, there's a few mindset things I wish I knew. The first one is that it is fucking hard and that is okay. So a lot of the times, like I mentioned in the podcast trailer, People only usually share their highlight reels, which I love celebrating people's successes and I love watching it and seeing it as inspiration and motivation. But on the flip side, it's like, okay, you had this amazing win. Show me all the hardships, show me all the challenges you had to battle with before you got there, because that's not the full story. And we need to stop telling half truths. Like, that's not the truth that you got to, I don't know, a multiple 7-figure business or whatever overnight. I want to see the time where you invested in the wrong thing or you made a blunder with your launch. I want to see that. And so that's why I'm doing this podcast, but also understand that it is really difficult and you don't need to feel isolated and you don't need to feel lonely because people tend to only show their highlights. That's why we continuously feel more isolated and more ashamed or more like, oh my gosh, I'm not cut out for this. Because if we're seeing Susan talk about how amazing her business is going, and then Arnold talk about how amazing his business is going, and we're struggling one day, we might think it's us and we might be like, oh, I'm just not cut out for this. But that's not the truth. Just know that it's hard, but it is worth it. The next kind of mindset shift too is that you do not need to subscribe to grow at all cost strategies. I used to do that. I used to be like, okay, I need to be hustling all the time. I need to be on hard mode. I need to do all those things because a lot of the times the business mentors back then that I was watching were a lot of men. Now, I still think it's important to get strategies from people, but then discern it and apply your own thoughts and your own abilities onto it and your own priorities. For me in this season, I want to be happy, I want to be healthy, and I want to build a business. But I don't want to just build my business at all costs. That's not what I'm into. So just knowing that. Also, of course, just having the mindset that while it's tough, you can still work smarter. Like I mentioned, invest in those programs and those mentors to shortcut your success. And the last thing I'll say is that there's no such thing as overnight success. With the highlight reel culture that we have, it may seem like Poppy that got that almost $2 billion PepsiCo deal that just happened overnight, but the founders built that brand over years and years and years, and they poured blood, sweat, and tears into it. And as another example, Uber launched in 2009, and it took them almost 5 years before they got any major traction. They had massive regulatory hurdles, and everyone kept saying, oh, this is not going to work. The taxi industry hated them, tried to do everything in their power to stop them. It didn't happen overnight. Almost 2 decades later, they're doing better. So all this to say, mindset as an entrepreneur is so important. It can make or break you, but also having the right expectations and the right mindset going into this. Knowing that it's going to be hard, knowing that it's going to take time, but knowing that that is what is going to be the beauty of this. Going through the journey, as cheesy as it sounds, is supposed to be just as amazing as when you finally reach that destination, because the person you become in the process, the community you get to build in the process, who you get to work with in the process, your customers and the lives you get to impact in the process. That's what should be motivating you, guiding you, and filling you up. On that note, these are all the things that I wish I knew when I was building my first business. I hope that this is helpful for you, and you can expect more of this from the Confessions of a Conscious CEO podcast. So if you haven't already, please subscribe, rate and review this podcast. It would mean the world to me. Share this with a friend who is thinking of starting a business or has a business, and I will see you in the next episode.